Welcome to Studio Snack. I'm Lydia Thornley, a multi-stranded creative practitioner.
And I'm Narcissa Oleda, a proud brand specialist.
June is a colourful month all about equality, so we're doing a Pride special.
Lydia, do you have any colorful snacks that you found?
Oh, I do. I found rainbow bagels. I'm going to have to eat one just because they exist. And we talk about eating the rainbow, lots of healthy variety, lots of fruit and veg.
That's actually a very good one because mine are not as healthy as yours because I found rainbow everything, cakes, popsicle, fudge, etc. But then definitely weren't as healthy as your. But this year we also gonna see less rainbows in logos, sign of times possibly.
Yes, exactly.
Speaking of rainbows, how did the rainbow become associated with pride?
Well, in 1978, Gilbert Baker, an artist and drag queen, was asked to make a symbol of pride. He chose a flag as his starting point. It's an existing format that does that, whether it's a place or a team or an event, and a rainbow as a natural flag from the sky, which I love. I also found a bit of physics nerdery, how rainbows happen, here from the Royal Meteorological Society. Bear with me because this is relevant to our story. Rainbows are formed when light from the sun is scattered by water droplets, for instance, raindrops or fog, through a process called refraction, which happens when sunlight changes direction as it passes through a medium denser than air. Sunlight is made of many different wavelengths or colours that travel at different speeds when passing through a medium, which causes the white light to split into different colours. Longer wavelengths red, shorter wavelengths blue or violet. Here's the interesting bit. We see the colour spectrum of the rainbow as the light passes through the raindrop at different angles from red to violet, and the colours mix and blur. But the angle of scatter from raindrops is different for everyone, which means that every rainbow is unique to the observer.
That is the loveliest thing
Isn't it?
we've ever said in this
Isn't it?
podcast. This is really nice. So I've been investigating other stuff, not that physics, because my brain is not prepared for that. And I found the secret language of the UK gay wall, which it's called Polaris. I didn't know it was called Polaris. I knew some of the words. Um, and these words, I've made a very small selection because the other ones I think they're not appropriate to use in the podcast. But some of the words that you might hear is when someone says, "I fancy chicken tonight," might not want a chicken wing. It might want like a young man. And obviously the one that we possibly all know, it's the tart, which is not a cake, it's a prostitute. And when someone is a bit a fruit or a fruity, it's a gay man. One interesting thing that I've also found is that taverns, cafes, clubs have existed for many decades as a safe place for and a place to exist. From the 18th century Molly houses to the 1980s lesbian potlucks, food has been a connector and a quiet act of resistance. Restaurants like Ethel's End in the 1930s or the first out cafe in London, they were heavens. They were safe places where people were welcomed, seen, and live a full life. Lydia, did you do any nerdery?
Oh, yes, I did. I have three small extra helpings of random nerdery for you. There is an academic conference, the Queer Food Conference, the next in 2026 in Montreal.
Interesting.
Gertrude Stein's partner, Alice B. Toklas, famous for her cookbook, which I won't go into here because Gertrude Stein's partner, Alice B. Toklas, who's famous for her cookbook, served to Picasso a dish of fish with three sauces styled to mimic Cubism.
Ah,
And I found a history of hidden spaces called back bars that were separate rooms in pubs that landlords would allocate for gay men to meet and socialise, which leads on nicely to this month's interview.
yes. So this month's WhatsApp interview is with Megan Cowlett-Reed, co-founder of Pride in Food. And we asked her what if being part of the community it's has colored her take on food, and that's what she said.
Being part of the LGBT community has definitely shaped how I engage with food, both both in how I experience it and how I help to create or share it with brilliant, culinary experts within our industry and our community. Um, I think a lot about food, not just being as sustenance or art, but as connection. Especially for those of us who've had to build, chosen families or find community in non-traditional ways. Meals become more than meals. They become ways to show care, create comfort, and establish a sense of belonging. I think visually and conceptually, queerness has also made me appreciate food that's subversive, playful, unexpected, things that challenge norms, whether that's through presentation or ingredients, storytelling. And I think, particularly for Pride in Food, we love it when, food breaks rules in a way that feels joyful or, vibrating. Um, there's something kind of beautifully queer about mixing high and low and tradition and reinvention, especially within workplace dining. So yeah, I think queerness has added values like community, resilience, creativity.
And I told her about the taverns and restaurants being a safe place. And I asked her on her work offline if there is anything in her power that can make the spaces safe.
Celebrating Pride in Food during Pride Month is absolutely brilliant. Whilst as a community, we don't physically create taverns or bars or restaurants, we absolutely create safe spaces, and it's something that we take really seriously. It kind of shows up in both our small and everyday kind of choices, as part of a larger structural decision within our work. We help to shape environments, whether it's kind of workplace culture or team dynamics or just generally community events. We try to make spaces safe for the LGBT community by fostering a sense of belonging, where people, especially from the LGBTQ plus community, feel seen, heard, protected. They can come to a space that is safe, and that celebrates them and their individuality. We also support kind of advocating for inclusive policies, ensuring that all these diverse, wonderful voices are at the table. We help to call out harmful behavior, microaggressions, and I believe just by simply holding a space for somebody's identity without question is hugely powerful, especially in the food scene. But just like those historic LGBT bars, the spaces that we influence, don't have to be huge to be powerful. They have to be intentional. So yeah, within my role within the Pride in Food Network, we do everything we can to make spaces feel safer, more inclusive, and affirming for everyone. Happy Pride Month.
And so many groups need safe spaces to get together.
Yeah, it's not, I think that's one of the things about Pride. It's not just about being gay. I think it's about being human being, because I think we do need safe spaces for everyone, for any minority groups.
Indeed, it's about everybody feeling welcome. And that takes us to our experiment this month. We had an idea of a themed menu. I went with a drag menu, well, free, because, well, you know what I'm like. And it's trickier than it seems because there's common ground between drag and cabaret and burlesque. So, how do we make something quintessentially drag? Well, my first experiment was to make the menu the insole of a sparkly platform shoe.
I love that.
Unworn, obviously, before the energetic drag performance down the runway. And I started by, because I had no time, by trying to get Dali to draw me a sparkly platform shoe. And it did quite accurately, but so often with this process, it was a bit, okay. Yes, it was too literal. So I illustrated it instead because I could exaggerate things, I could exaggerate the sparkle, I could do exactly what I wanted to do with it and then make up my menu, which I've done in hand lettering on the inside. Then I had a go at a menu laid out variety poster style, using food names with the colours of the rainbow in them that could also be the names of drag artists. And that is every bit as tricky as it sounds. It took me a long time. There was an awful lot of Googling of recipes.
It's brilliant.
My personal favourite is Bitter Orange Tart, who I think if she isn't a drag queen, she needs to be.
Absolutely.
But of course, I realised if you've taken that much care with your full on makeup, you wouldn't want to mess it all up with snacks. So my last menu is wrapped around a straw.
Oh, yes.
And
That's
it
brilliant.
would be, I think I worked out that it would be cocktails and then gazpacho and then maybe something like il flottante, although that could be a bit messy to try and eat through a straw.
That's brilliant. I went and celebrated a barbecue. So what I've created is a barbecue menu. And what I've done is using stuff that we've sort of talked about it, like a rainbow salad, and obviously I've added some chicken in the grill, real chicken, not young men.
I'm glad that cannibalism hasn't found its way into our podcast. And what have we done for our sound experiment this month? Absolutely nothing, because we would be lip syncing.
Yes. So what have we learned about our practice in this episode?
Well, I found this a lot more interesting when I got below the surface. And I think that's so true of any bit of research. Corporates sometimes jump on the rainbow or not, depending on cultural shifts. But just as a logo doesn't really tell us anything on its own, I think depth is really important with research because you can scrape that surface level. But once you dig around and find out more about the subject, there are all sorts of fascinating stories in there. I was also reminded that one thing can actually be about another. Here, food being about community and places where people can be themselves. And just as in food, in design, there are people whose identity is at the heart of their work and people whose work and identity are entirely separate. And I think that's been an interesting thing to think through as we've done the research for this episode. How about you, Narcissus?
Yes. I think sometimes, I think a lot of times things are not what they look like. I'm thinking about those taverns and those restaurants where you, as a cis heterosexual person, you might not notice that that is a safe place for gay people, and
Yeah.
then gay people are there because the place is safe. And I also think that, as you were saying, sometimes just because you color your logo in rainbow doesn't mean that you are an inclusive employer. So I think sometimes I see branding as a little act of activism where you actually do stuff because you do really believe in it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And that authenticity is starting to matter more and more in communications.
Absolutely.
Join us next month for another studio snack. Rainbow bagel?
Yes, absolutely.